So our theme for this year is living out loud. And for the month of July, our theme is speaking truth to circumstance. Speaking truth to circumstance. And the weekly topic title is Monsters, Inc. Now, I don't know if you remember that movie. It came out in 2001. It was a Pixar Disney movie. And it was about this alternate universe, you might say, of the multiverse that connects with ours, where the monsters lived, the ones that were under your bed or in the closet as a child. Remember those monsters? And that actually they were there to make the children scream because the screams powered their universe. OMG. So this little girl named Boo, little teeny girl, somehow found her way into that universe. And the thing is, the monsters thought that children were toxic. So they were terrified of this little girl who was just very curious. She was just checking it all out. She was just looking everywhere and thinking, wow. And they're all like, ah! Screaming and running away. And the thing is, a couple of the monsters sort of take her under, they realize that she's not hurting them, and they actually realize that they can get more energy from her laughter than from her screams. And so they end up shifting the whole consciousness of this alternate world towards laughter instead of fear and screams. So it's about thinking about what we think about. That is the practice of the science of mind, really. Think about what you think about. I used to have a little sign. It had a picture of the thinker, that statue of Rodin, and it said, "Think before you think." But the thing we have to do is not believe everything we think. Yes, it's a practice. It's a practice because those monsters believed that children were toxic. So, they had a belief, and we've all got beliefs that we have accumulated during our lives. We got them from our parents, our families, our churches, our teachers, our friends. We accumulated all these beliefs, and some of them we got when we didn't even speak language too much, and so we got a belief. Maybe we got dropped as a small baby, and we just thought the world isn't safe. The world is a painful place. And we don't even know that we have that thought because it's not a word thought. It's a belief that we don't even know that we have. So getting in touch with these beliefs, getting in touch with what is there that no longer serves us is our practice here. Years ago, let's talk about the IRS. Scary, right? A lot of people think the IRS, oh, scary. And I got audited by the IRS many moons ago. I had been working as a consultant. I was making good money, but I was going to school, and so I was paying for the school myself. Now, a lot of my classmates were going on the company's dime, but I wasn't, because I was a consultant, not an employee. And so I got audited. So on my way, I'm driving to the audit, and I'm thinking, I'm a good person. I have all the documentation. I have not tried to defraud anyone. So I'm good. It's going to be fine. And I just kept that thought. All is well. I got into the office. The fear was palpable in the waiting room. It really was. But I was sticking to my affirmations. I was in the Science of Mind training classes, and I was like, I'm a good person. All is well. And sure enough, I went in there. I showed him all my check stubs. I showed him all the information. And they just took copies of it and said, okay, thanks, bye. And it was like, I went by and all these other people were like, you know. So I knew that I was good to go. So I didn't go in there with that fear, and I think that IRS agents are tuned to look for the fear because they think there's something there. So the thing is, we have to free ourselves from imagining the worst case scenario. Now the thing is, sometimes imagining a worst case scenario is helpful because then you prepare. You just, you have your go bag, right? You do what you can, but then you can't let it dominate your life. You have to just say, I've done what I can do, and that's all I can do, and so now I have to live my life. I have to live. So we have to free ourselves from the fear in order to take authentic action, in order to respond rather than react, right? To respond rather than react. I loved, do you remember the movie San Francisco with Clark Gable? Now, this is an ancient movie, 1936. But it was on television, And of course, I lived in San Francisco. They showed that movie a lot. And in that movie, when the earthquake happens, everybody else is freaking out except for Clark Gable. He is just like walking over the rubble and lifting stuff up and helping people. And he's like cool as a cucumber. Me, I freak. I was at a friend's house in December in the Bay Area. And I'm fast asleep on the couch. And all of a sudden, my phone says, earthquake warning, take cover, and I'm like, ah! I jump up, I run into the nearest doorway, which is next to the refrigerator. I think if the ceiling falls, I'm next to the refrigerator, it'll, Nothing happens. Nothing happens. So I look at the app, and sure enough, there was an earthquake in Humboldt County. I'm in Redwood City. But it thought I was in Grass Valley. So it was warning me about there might be something because I was further north, Well, the thing is, it's important, once we have that immediate reaction, to stop and say, what's going on here? And center ourselves. Because we have to see beyond the circumstance. Here's the circumstance. Can I see beyond the circumstance? What can I do? I didn't just keep freaking out and thinking, oh my God, we're going to have an earthquake any minute. I just said, let me look at this app and see what's up. And sure enough, there was nothing to worry about, and I went back to sleep as soon as I got my heart rate back down again. But, it's about having that capability. Aldous Huxley said, experience is not what happens to a man, it is what a man does with what happens to him. Experience is not about what happens to a man, it is about what a man does with what happens to him. Do we learn the lesson? Like the song said, I never make the same mistake. I'll make a different mistake. How many times did Edison fail to make that light bulb before he actually succeeded? I think Walt Disney went to 300 banks to try to get a loan to start Disneyland. He was turned down and turned down and turned down, but he was persistent because he had a vision that he knew the timing was right. And so he persisted. A lot of what we think of as power is really about control. It's not about power, because we know there is only one power. That is the power of the Spirit of life itself. That is the only true power. So we have to remember that all this other stuff that looks like power is really control masquerading as power. It's not the real thing. And when we align with the real power, we can see our way through this control issue and this circumstance. When I was also in the corporate world, I was a technical project manager, software project manager for the year 2000 project. Remember that one? And I was working for a corporation. I was a consultant. And I was managing a whole bunch of different programmers. And we had a certain goal that we were to meet. And they had given us a due date. And I did a PERT chart. Now, a PERT chart says, these are the people, these are the work that has to be done, these are the dependencies that have to unfold. You can't do this until this is done, you can't do that until this is done. And you put that all together and you come out with a date that looks like you can really make it. So I went in to the boss there and I said, this is the date that is the real date. Well, he freaked out. He was giving me this argument, that, you have to make blah, 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 blah. And all I could see was like a neon sign above his head flashing, fear, 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 fear. And I just showed him the chart. I showed him all the dependencies. I showed him everything there. And I said, this is the date. And he finally looked at me and said, will you go with me to my boss when I explain this? So I did. Because I didn't buy into the fear. I knew that what I had done was the right thing, so I had power of truth on my side, whereas he had that fear and control on his. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of the Science of Mind and Spirit, said, one alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. One alone in consciousness with the infinite constitutes a complete majority. Now, our practice here in the Science of Mind and Spirit consists of meditation and prayer. Now, the thing is, prayer is us talking to ourselves about what is true. Prayer does nothing to God. What it does is align us with the truth, with spirit. Meditation allows us to hear our intuition, to hear the voice of spirit that is giving us the information we need to bring forth that which we have claimed in the prayer, which we call spiritual mind treatment, because we're treating our mind to align with spirit. And we also have practices of service, of study, and of giving and receiving, because that's a circle. We give, we receive. We receive, we give. You've heard the phrase, speaking truth to power. Well, we practice speaking truth from power. And that's much more powerful. Because when we speak truth to power, we're giving them the power. We're saying in our mind, they're powerful. In truth, nobody is more powerful than anybody else. And we talk about corporations like they're one big clump. They're all made up of people. And each of those people is no greater than we are. So we connect with the universal realization that we're connected to all of it, to everything. So we have to keep our spiritual practice, do our spiritual practice. When I started out in this teaching, I was meditating for like 10 minutes a day. I'd set an alarm 10 minutes before I had to get up, and then I would just sort of try not to go back to sleep. That was my practice. But, now I am in meditation and prayer every morning because I find that when I am what we call prayed up, I have the capacity to do a response rather than a reaction. Now, do I react sometimes? Yeah, I jumped out of bed when the earthquake warning came. I'm still human, but I have more of a capacity for response because I do this practice daily. Then we can see beyond the organizations, we can see beyond the people, we can see beyond what appear to be obstacles. We can step outside of the media and the collective consciousness. We believe there's only one consciousness, and that consciousness of spirit is everywhere. And within that consciousness, we also have the whole of human consciousness. So what are we contributing to that whole of human consciousness? God bless you. What are we contributing? What are the thoughts in our mind going into this collective consciousness? Are we thinking thoughts of unity, of beauty, bless you, of joy, of harmony, of wholeness, of oneness? Are we realizing that we are one? Are we realizing that we are made of love, here to love? Are we knowing that? Are we living that to the greatest degree we can? Are we trying to remember that when we get triggered? Are we trying to remember that we're all one? One of the things we do in our prayer is we pray about the what, not the how. Because we set an intention for what is our heart's desire. But we don't want to outline the steps through which it could happen. Because then we're limiting how it could happen. When we can focus on the what and let go of the how, amazing things can happen. Amazing things can unfold. And I think many of us who've been in this teaching for a while can testify to that. Often our first reaction to wounding or outrageous circumstances, flight, fight, or freeze. We're going to add another one, turn within. Turn within. Not as in hiding, but is turning to that infinite power. And when we realize that Spirit's the ultimate source, we turn into that foundation, and from that foundation, we can do amazing things. We don't deny that there's pain and suffering. We don't deny the reality of these things, and yet we look towards a greater reality. We lift our thoughts above the circumstance to see what Spirit has in mind now for us. What is the lesson that we are here to learn? How are we to move through this experience? In the Torah, Moses is called, the Torah being the first 5 books of the Bible, we call them the Old Testament, but the Torah is those first 5 books, and in that Torah, in the Hebrew version, they call Moses the meekest of men. We think about what is the meekest of men. Well, the meekest of men means that they set their own doubts and fears aside. They set their own doubts and fears aside and listen to Spirit. And when that happens, we saw that he was able to lead his people out of captivity. We're all captives as long as we don't turn into that spirit within. It is about us opening to that greater truth, that greater spirit, that greater realization that something bigger is happening here and we are a part of it, and tuning into what is our part in the evolution of consciousness, in the evolution of our society, in the evolution of our family, in the evolution of the world as we know it. So we are just called to action to identify the monsters in our own life. It could be a close, it could be close or personal, it could be a world situation, and just ask ourselves, what is Spirit's idea here? What is Spirit's view of this? And what is mine to become, and what is mine to release? Because when we uncover some of these beliefs, what we find is they are really no longer helpful. They are actually inhibiting us from living our full lives now. So let us take that opportunity to look above whatever we think is the obstacle, the monster, and know the truth about it. We look at what is happening and we think, what would a person have to believe for this to happen? What would a person have to believe for this to happen? And whatever we come up with, we switch it to the opposite thing and say, I'm going to believe this because that looks like a more life-giving thing. That is life-giving for me. So, let us just know that we are powerful beyond all the monsters, and that together we can be the presence of love, the presence of joy, the presence of harmony, the presence of wholeness, and share that with the world. Let's go within. So I just give thanks for this time together, for the wisdom, for the opening, for the realization of that presence and power that is everywhere. And know that if there is a word that has touched anyone, or the word that has inspired anyone, or word that has given anyone a new perspective and a new thought, we just give thanks for it. We give thanks for the shift, for the opening, for the realization that is being made manifest through us today. And we know that we take it out into the world as joy, as peace, as harmony, and as wholeness. And so with great gratitude, I release my word knowing it is complete. And we affirm this together as we say, and so it is.